Good morning, this is Father Stephen Kelly from St. John's Church in Detroit. And we're continuing our series of daily morning meditations where we look at one or another of the lessons that are assigned for morning and evening prayer, what is known as the daily office lectionary. And you can see I'm shooting this morning's meditation, it's still dark. However, I do want to continue going through St. Matthew's Gospel. We're now on the 24th chapter, beginning at verse 29, and we're continuing our way through the story of the end times. And I particularly want to talk a little bit about kind of a recent phenomenon, and that is the idea of the parousia. Now, there's a lot of theology out there that's floating around, kind of made very popular by the Left Behind series. It started out as a trilogy and became one of several, maybe a dozen books and movies that has to do with the end times. What might be interesting to you to understand is that, in fact, this idea of a parousia, where people are left behind and they're there for a period of time, is a weird conflagration, if that's a word, of both the idea from today's gospel lesson, where this is two people who work in the field and one will be taken and one will be left, and then, of course, what we would read about in the Revelation to St. John the Divine. Now, remember we haven't done St. John the Divine yet, but the book of Revelation is a book not only of what is coming in the future, but it was the future for St. John himself and the destruction of the church, the destruction of the Roman Empire and the effects that it would have on society then, as well as a coming destruction and the end of time for all of civilization. And so you have both of those things happening at the same time in the book of Revelation. And boy, poor old St. John, he's trying to describe to us something that he is seeing that for which there are just not human words in order to put into effect. But we'll leave that for another day when we get to Revelation. I actually had a very interesting opportunity to travel to the Holy Land. I've actually been to Israel twice. One time I lived there for about 5 weeks, and I lived at St. George's Anglican College and took a class where we went all over Israel and studied archaeology and theology. It was fantastic. And then I went back for one of these kind of tours that you hear advertised on the radio. And in fact, Jennifer and I celebrated our 1-year anniversary by taking this trip to the Holy Land. We did it with a group, a radio show that used to come on in Philadelphia area when I would pick Jennifer up and drive her home from work. So we thought, let's go with this group. Well, what we discovered was that the leader of the group, whose radio show it was married to a fellow who was a pastor. And I didn't know him from Adam, but he was going to be the leader. And he was very much into this whole theology of the end times. He was all about prophecy. And I have to say, I was a relatively new priest then. I'd been ordained about a year. But the things he was espousing was nothing at all that I had read in the scriptures, and nothing that seemed to be a part of the teaching of the one holy Catholic and Apostolic Church, including his absolute obsession with end times. He was constantly looking for end times. As a matter of fact, there was an odd circumstance where they had a group come and speak to us at dinner that wanted to rebuild the temple in Jerusalem. Why did they want to do that? Well, they felt that if they supported the Jewish groups that wanted to rebuild the temple in Jerusalem, then Jesus would have to come back. It would have to be the end of the times, because we can't have the temple because the temple's been destroyed, because Jesus is the one sufficient sacrifice once offered for the sins of the world. So somehow they thought they were going to be able to force God's hand by rebuilding the temple. I kid you not. Well, in the end, this particular fellow started talking to me about a series of fictional books that he was writing based on these biblical prophecies that he had been studying for years and years and years. And sure enough, the guy who was leading our tour was Tim LaHaye, one of the authors of the Left Behind series. So let's get back to what Jesus is talking about, okay? In St. Matthew's Gospel, what he's talking about is that the end of time is coming. We confess in the Creed that there will be a time when Jesus Christ will return to judge the quick and the dead, quick being another word for living. And so it is what we were talking about when one is taken and one is left. The one is left is going to perdition. They're going to hell. That they're done. They are not saved. They have not proclaimed Jesus Christ as Lord and lived their lives as accepting him by faith through grace by faith in Jesus Christ. And so when the end of time comes, as Jesus said, the angel said after Jesus ascended into heaven, he turns around and he says, men of Galilee, why do you look up into heaven? This Jesus will come back again in the same way that you saw him go. And so, folks, that's what we have to look forward to. Jesus will return. Those of us who have tried to be faithful, but especially those who believe that he is Lord, will welcome his return. And those who do not will cower in fear. So let's, all the life that we have to live, all the work that we're doing as members of the body of Christ, well, folks, guess what? It's all good to have Jesus Christ come back, because he's coming back to take us home. And we look forward to that. No rush for him for us to hasten his hand. But when he comes, we'll rejoice. I hope you have a fantastic Tuesday, and may God bless you.